The last time we spoke, you said you hadn't been doing much cycling, but you were hitting the tandem.
Yes. So we did 94. Not last year. We actually couldn't. My mom was very sick and she died of cancer during this period.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean she died on the 28th of November. So it was just, there was a lot going on. So I twisted my ankle, and so when it came to 94, we just said, you know what, we're not there. And so we're doing it this year, but we did it tandem the year before. But we did like some other tough races. We've done the Meals on Wheels, which is the one that goes through Suikerbos Rand.
Okay, nice.
It's massive. I mean, it's the biggest climbs you can get in Gauteng. And, we did that now, about three weeks ago.
Okay, on tandem. You say you at?
My partner, Lisa, yeah.
Okay, so I've trail run in Suikerbos. Beautiful. I wish there was mountain bike trails there because the area there is incredible.
Yeah, again, I think the reason why there isn't is if you start to allow, to create more tracks.
I guess there's more damage. There's more damage that can happen than if you're running or hiking.
Yes.
And then obviously cycling on the road is fine.
I think that's probably the reason, but they should. I mean, it would bring money to that area. It would bring all that because it is, as you say, I mean, it's awesome. Imagine mountain biking in that area. It must be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've trail ran. It's cool if we're starting already. So just be part of it. Cool. So I've trail run Hearties, all of those places.
I've done Hearties also.
Yeah, within the Gauteng area. Well, I guess Suikerbos runs just out of Gauteng, but I would consider still Gauteng-ish.
Well, so do I.
It's close enough.
Yeah.
So out of the places that I've been that are beautiful, Suikerbos has been my favorite. I mean, Hearties is still incredible, but if I could cycle in Suikerbos, I think that would be incredible.
Yeah. You say that. I mean, the climbs are pretty intense, and I mean, you got some gradients that it kicks up to about 12%.
Steep.
Yeah, on actual gradient.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's also like unrelenting. So you like go and it's building. Then they have a tips up at about 8-9%. Then levels out. Then it tips up again. Then you go over and you drop for a bit, and then you back up again. So you got a bit of recovery, but you constantly pushing.
Yeah.
But the weather was very hot.
Yeah, the last few weeks have been exceptionally warm. And now obviously 94, it's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I signed up last week.
Oh, you doing
I got it, but on a mountain bike.
Okay, so that's this weekend. Were you doing the road race?
I'm doing the road race on a mountain bike, yeah.
Okay.
One of my friends said he's got a free ticket. Would I like to do it? I was like, you know what, why not?
Yeah.
Because I've never done one. My dad's done so many when I was younger, going and supporting him. So I was like, you know what, it's a free ticket. Even though it's on a mountain bike, lock out my shocks, and just the guys I'm riding with us on mountain bikes. So it'll still be fun.
Yeah. You know what, it's that. I mean, I've done also, I think I've done.
That was mine, I think.
No, but I also must get mine. I've done, I think, about 18.
Okay.
I've entered probably 21 or 22 of them. And then just like, for instance, I didn't do last year, and there's been a few years in between also where I didn't do it. But I think I'm sitting on about 18 of them.
Nice.
And like for me now, I just want to get the 20.
Yeah.
But also what I want to do next year is August. And Lisa's never done August. And I think anyone that actually, but again, Cape Town can have 4 seasons in one day. So I've had Augusts where literally from the start, the wind was so heavy, guys were being blown over, or up by Hospital Bend, same thing, or going over Suikerbos through Llandudno. So the wind can play a factor, but also so can the heat. But when it's perfect, it can be unbelievable. When you're going through Misty Cliffs and that whole Komiki area, it is so special.
Yeah, I don't know why people want to leave the country, but if you look at even our little dirty Joburg is beautiful, and there's stunning places here, and everyone thinks it's green on the other side, and it most certainly isn't.
You say that, and what's interesting is Lisa's friends. I mean, they've been in the UK for think 5+ years, and not short of money. I mean, he's in the financial sector, earns very big money, works with some of the biggest investment companies in the world. And they coming back to, they originally said Cape Town, and they're like, no, they want to come back to Joburg. As tough as it is in Joburg, as far as the potholes and load shedding hasn't been an issue, but I know water is going to become a big issue. It's imminent, that situation. But this is still an amazing city. We still have some of the best weather in the world. I mean, our winters are mild. Yes, we can go from 0 to 20 in one day, but it's a mild winter.
But you're still going to 20 in winter, which is cool.
Exactly.
It's nice and warm.
Yeah. So for me, I love this country. I've had many choices, many opportunities to go to Australia. And then every time I've come back saying, no, this is, I'm quite happy to be here. We got our challenges, but even economically, and I mean, we'll go into that just now, but this country still has great value. Even for us, we expect, things are more expensive and restaurants are more expensive and prices and this and that. But in comparison to anywhere else in the world, it is still very good value.
Especially property.
Well, property, I mean, we were talking about it the other day, and you see the property market in Cape Town, it's exploded. Yeah. And because you got a foreign market that's buying into that, that's bringing dollars and euros and pounds and so on, they've just lifted that whole market. Locally, it's a little bit tight, and guys are not getting the prices they want because they're kind of trying to get the relative pricing from Cape Town. So something that used to be, say, 8 million, they're trying to get 12, and they won't. So it is a far more competitive market, but then you can actually get properties at a better value here. So again, it's the swings and roundabouts of life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your business, fortunately, is irrespective of, well, it obviously can get dictated by it, but not by your local economy. It's on a global economy. You're working with gold, you're working with silver, these precious metals, where it's dictated worldwide as opposed to being subject to how the economy is performing, in Joburg or South Africa especially.
Yeah, Jesse, I mean, that for me has been so critical. If we see, of course, we are influenced internationally. As a country, we are affected by the rand-dollar exchange. So when the rand is weakened to the dollar, in other words, it goes up to the dollar, we experience it through imports. We experience it through a lot of those things. Fuel goes up. All those kind of things get affected by the rand-dollar exchange. We look at gold. Now, internationally, gold has done exceptionally well this year. We were looking at, every single year at the beginning of the year, we do our forecasts. And we look at the different markets. We look at different individuals that are market leaders or people that are considered to be well-versed in projecting and in understanding the markets. And we also look at the big investment companies, your Morgan Stanleys, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and so on. So we look at all of those across the board, and the projections for 2024 for gold, the highest one we got was around probably $2,300, and even there, that was pretty bullish. And we came in saying at about probably $2,250. We predicted that would happen around August. And we then predicted that there'd be quite a pull back towards 2,000, and then it would slowly go back to 200, finishing off the year $2,200 an ounce. It's just gone past 2,300, past 2,400, past 2,500. It's now sitting at 2,700 and about $35 an ounce. And there's a number of factors that affects that. You look internationally, and these things, even though they're not happening directly to us, we are directly affected by them. The geopolitical instability around the world. You see what's happening in the Ukraine, where North Korea has decided to start getting involved there. That's a problem. You look at what's happening in Israel and now with Iran and all of that. That is another problem developing, which can overnight creates definite sides and which country supports, and countries go to war on things like that. If you see how World War II happened, it was in Sarajevo, where it was, I think it was King or Prince Ferdinand who was assassinated. Yet that was the spark that caused the whole of World War II. And it's the same kind of thing. So we see that geopolitical uncertainty. We see economically. The US, with the geopolitical, of course, as we speak in today, it's the US elections. So by the time when people have actually started to listen to this podcast, we would have had a winner. Is it going to be Harris or is it going to be Trump? And each side is quite polarized on who should be. Even I was listening yesterday that families are lying to each other about who they're voting for, because if they say they support Trump, then there's a whole backlash to that if they say they support Harris. And this is even within own families. So it is very polarized, and that does affect the world. The big thing with that is who will become president, who has a definite clear idea on their foreign policy. Foreign policy affects the rest of the world. So that is quite an important part. But we look at the other side of the States. Economically, the States is in a lot of trouble. Even last week, they released the Buffett indicator, and it's normally a whole batch of different indicators across the board on different parts of the economy. And literally out of the 18, I think there was 15 that were all red, and there were 3 greens. In other words, that's imminent that we are due for some massive market correction, be it a massive recession, which we technically are in already, or a major recession or depression. Now, we've spoken about depressions or a depression since probably about 2019. And every year we say it's getting close, and the fundamentals are starting to show that that's actually becoming more and more realistic. We look at the growth, the GDP growth versus the debt, the GDP ratio versus the debt ratio in the States. And it's at all-time highs. It's in the trillions of dollars. The economy can't afford to take on any more debt. And the biggest problem is with international monetary policy, it's been since COVID and even before, is to literally print ourselves out of the problem. But that has its own issues. We create more debt, but in turn you create inflation. You create a whole lot of things that affect everything. So effectively, the power of that money, be it a dollar or a rand, gets diminished. And it's simple. What you would have paid for something at the shops 5 years ago, what are you paying now? Simple things.
More than standard inflation should be.
Exactly.
Annual inflation is
exactly.
Way higher than what it should be annually, at least.
Yeah. And that's the indicator to me. So then we look at so there's all this global stuff, but now we bring it to South Africa. We've been very fortunate. The rand has been slightly stronger to the dollar. Are we out of the clear? Are we out of a gray listing? No. There's still a lot of fundamentals that are still not right. We are still, as far as our growth in the country, as GDP growth, it's nowhere near where it should be. In fact, as far as an economy, and we're one of the biggest on the continent, we have one of the slowest growth rates. And it's crazy. You look at the infrastructure, you look at the people we have in this country, and it doesn't make sense. So politically, there has to be some changes. We've been through our own elections now, where we got the government of national unity, and that seems to be working, but not. And 1 week we got replacements of people and so on. So there is that instability. But the rand is strong because the dollar is weak. And let's be very clear on that. It's not because the rand we are performing, and that's why the rand's strong. It's very simple. The dollar is weak in its position right now. So yes, but overnight the rand could slip to the dollar, and we could go. And we've also projected that we would probably see the rand to dollar into the 20s in the near future. If we've seen the deterioration of the rand to dollar over even the last 5 years, every year it's at 50 cents to 1 rand depreciation, and it's pulling back. You'll get a pullback where it strengthens a little bit, and then it goes further. So we've hit 19, we've hit 1950, we've come very close to 20, and there's been all these pullbacks. The likelihood is the trajectory of the rand is to go to 20, and then if we cannot maintain our economy, it will escalate. We just got to look north of our border. There are countries with massive losses in their value of their currencies to the dollar. And, we've done work in Nigeria with the naira to the dollar, and how literally the naira has fallen off a cliff from from a naira to dollar perspective. And essentially what that means is, remember I spoke about inflation. It's a loss of the power of what you earn. And that's the simple thing. And that for me is what it comes down to. So we talk about gold, we talk about those things which I'm passionate about and I love. And I see that in a world where there's so much uncertainty, there's one asset that currently has been the top performer this year, has been gold, hands down. And the great thing with gold is, in a tangible form, in the form of a medallion or a Kruger Rand, which is a sovereign coin, or any form like that, it holds an intrinsic wealth. There's a value to it where you can take that coin anywhere in the world and you get a similar value to it, regardless of what currency it is in. So if the dollar does weaken, it doesn't matter. Whatever currency, the gold price itself would still have a value.
So then if obviously someone is a South African, they become a client of yours, they maybe buy some gold, some bullions or whatever from you. Let's say the rand is at 17. Then now they want to sell and it's at 20. It doesn't matter actually, because whatever you bought it at is irrespective, because universally the price is always going to go up of gold because its value, it's never had massive drops. And I think historically, based on that evidence, we can see that it's just going to continue to go up. So you're safeguarding yourself against whatever political issues around the world are happening. And I think that's what's nice about gold, is because the person that owns gold in a country that's at war against America and the person that's in America that owns gold, their gold is worth the same, irrespective of their countries being at war. So you can still sell that gold, and it doesn't matter what country you're from, even if our rand is really weak.
Yeah. So again, we always say gold is geo neutral. So regardless of where you go in the world, it will hold that value. Interesting, we talk about, you remember with, like I said, that the world is kind of being polarized to a degree, where the West, or the Western world, and now you got the formation of BRICS and the strengthening of BRICS. And there's very big talk within the BRICS sector that they want to actually put a currency that's hedged to gold. And essentially what they're really trying to do is break the dominance of the dollar, the petrodollar. In other words, the international form of monetary exchange has always been in dollars. Well, in recent history. But again, if you look 50, 80 years ago, the pound was stronger. And you go further into history, every currency of the nation that probably dominated the world at that period of time, their currency was the strongest. The US is in the form of decline if you look at just a natural cycle. So what's happening now is we're going through that gray period where people don't know what's going to happen. And again, you mentioned something so important, is if you look at the value of gold, even over the last 50 years, it has given a compound return just in dollars, CAGR, compound return in dollars of 8% per annum. And if you look at the 80s and 90s as decades, there were quite lateral periods for gold where it was a little bit up, but it was more lateral in growth. But if you take that step back and you look over the last 50 years, those lateral periods were actually almost dipping upward, if that makes sense. That the growth in gold has been consistently moving up over the period of time. You look at the rand, you look at the dollar, you look at any of those other fiat currencies, and you'll see that their value in earning has actually decreased. So if you look at what $100 would have bought you in 1913 when the dollar came into being, you would see that $100 would have bought you X. $100 doesn't even come close to what it would buy you then.
I think that's what's nice about investing in precious metals in general, with the ones that have historically had the growth, is because if I go put my let's say I put 100,000 Rand into a savings account. Let's say I also get 8% return. That buying power of that 8%, because of the inflation rate being far higher than that, is still actually less than almost the original investment that I might have put in. Whereas with the gold, you're going to constantly have that growth. So you're still hedging against inflation as well.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something earlier, where say you buy gold today and the Rand dollar is around $17.40, $17.50, 17 Rand to a dollar. And what happens when the Rand loses value to the dollar? Your wealth effectively increases. So that suddenly that what you bought at 17 Rand has a value of 19 Rand. So you're actually scoring. Again, as gold in its own right is growing, you're also going to have that growth. And this is why I've always said, as South Africans, and again, I was at a major investment company yesterday in Midrand, and I was talking to one of the execs there. And of course, they deal with traditional investments. They're looking at what the equities, property, and so on offers the markets, bonds and stocks and da-da-da-da. But as soon as I start talking about gold, it's almost as though that's not even a consideration. And if you look, and I mean, this is the information and a lot of the statistics that we get from the US with a lot, that gold market, as far as buying, especially in Europe also, is quite a mature market. So it's quite a big market in the sense that people do buy gold, buy silver and so on. And they use it as that form of protection against currency devaluation or even more important, against inflation. So, and when I spoke to her and I said, this is what we're looking at doing. We're doing gold as far as physical. We go from a little 1 gram medallion right up to a 32 ounce, which is a kilogram of gold in the form of a medallion. And you can see it's a whole paradigm shift that people need to start seeing. And that's, for me, is probably the most important part of my job, is to make people aware. And I don't see it as a job. I see it as a passion. I see it as such an important thing that when things do start going south, that people can still have some of their wealth in an asset class such as gold, in physical gold, that can be picked up and it can be moved at any given time, and that will hold value. In fact, it will grow. So if we look at Argentina in January of 2020, the dollar to the peso, or the peso to the dollar, was about 59 pesos to the dollar. Currently, we're looking at about 900 pesos to the dollar.
Sure.
So what that means is very simply, and what we did is, if you had gone and spent 1 million pesos worth of gold in January of 2020, we've given you about 11 ounces of gold. If you go and buy 1 million pesos worth of gold right now, it won't even give you 1 ounce. So that is real loss of wealth. Interesting enough, that 11 ounces of gold in pesos is now worth over 5, 6, 7 million pesos. So suddenly, an investment which was 1 million pesos is now 4, 5 times its value over that period of time, where everyone around you would have been losing actual wealth, literally wealth falling through their hands. Here, you've not just maintained, you've actually grown your wealth over that period of time.
And I've seen, we mentioned property in South Africa, and we've mentioned, obviously the price increasing, at least in Cape Town, drastically. And there's definitely been, because I am interested in property, but not to the extent of maybe more your generation and my dad's generation, of trying to accumulate almost as much property because it's a guaranteed investment. And I think millennials, Gen Z, definitely. I was reading something, I'll lie if I said the exact numbers, but it was a drastic amount of less properties being purchased by people from 20 to 30, whatever time period it was, but it was recent, and it's drastically far less people are buying properties because they don't see the value in it as much, or whatever reasons, but we still need to make investments and we still need to safeguard our money, but we don't maybe see having grown up seeing our parents having stress with property, having X, Y, and Z, all these things with property, I've seen at least my group of friends, even my one friend who's a real estate agent, recently just sold his property and he's rather just going to rent because he was like, it's giving me too many problems. As an agent, he sees the properties in the area maybe decreasing and he's just like, maybe my money will be safer somewhere else. So that's actually one of your new products, is maybe more tailored towards those people that still want to make investments, still want to obviously safeguard their cash, to their money and their savings to a degree. They want to have something that they obviously can save up on and not have to really worry about it. As a property, you got to worry about so many different factors. And I was actually going to ask you what the name and why you made the name Gold Bean, but now obviously seeing it and seeing how it's shaped and all of that, I do understand now what your new product is, Gold Bean.
Yeah, so Jesse, I mean, again, the big thing with property is expense. The statistics are that most Gen Zs will end up living with their parents far later, or living with a partner, and renting far later into their lives. The idea of a property anchors you into one place. I think as Gen Zs and millennials, the world is far smaller. The access to wanting to get up and to go and spend a couple of years in the States or in Europe or in the East, or you know, the world is far more open to that. And I think especially the Gen Zs and millennials to a degree, that's more appealing, to be tied down onto a property. As you say, a lot of the times previously they have given great growth. We look in Cape Town, yes, it would be great to get into the market, but you see the buy-in is at such a high level already. So that straight away from a millennial or Gen Z is you coming into the work market. You got your first job. Again, most millennials will have more than 5 to 8 jobs in their career, and generally they'll probably have 2 jobs at the same time. So the idea of how things were done before has radically changed. And this was perfect. And what you're talking about is our Gold Bean coins. And what was actually this came from was from China, where a lot of the Gen Zs, there's massive unemployment. They've had massive inflation. And for them as a collective, they started to see, what can we buy to actually just start to accumulate wealth? And they started buying little grams of gold in the form of a granule, or they call it a bean. And they started to accumulate these, and it became a viral trend. And this was from probably March this year, where it actually started to take off massively, where you could actually buy little bottles of granules of gold. And, you know, there's a value to that. Now, we've spoken about the value of gold. It's a given. But the access to gold, I mean, an ounce of gold right now, which is about 32 grams an ounce. And you look at a Kruger Rand, that's around 33 grams, but it has an ounce of gold in it. A Kruger Rand right now will cost you around about 50,000 Rand. In fact, a little bit more, about 52,000 Rand.
So I bought 2 quarter ounces, maybe about 5 years ago, at, I think it was like 32,000 for both. I think it was like 16 each, roughly.
Yeah.
And now I think it's closer to 40 would be for both.
Yeah. Again, I sold my father-in-law. He bought 2 Kruger Rands from me 3 years ago. What he paid for them then, he's already made over 10,000 Rand per Kruger Rand just over the last 3 years.
By doing nothing, not having worries.
By doing nothing. And he is a pensioner. You know, he doesn't have a lot of a disposable income, so he's got to be quite clear on his decision making on that. But the great thing with that is he could take that Kruger Rand today and he can liquidate it, and you could have that value gained. So, you know, again, gold is liquid. There's a demand for it. It's easy to sell it. It's also, and I will always say this, do your homework when selling gold, because if you sell it to the guys that We Buy Gold or Divorce Your Gold, yes, they will buy it from you, but they'll buy it at a premium that benefits them.
It's almost like going to cash converters and selling something.
Exactly. So your third-party buyers, or your pawn shops, all the cash converters, they buy jewelry, and they will buy it in the value of the gold. but they will give you spot less 30, 40, 50% at times. So they're not in it to try and benefit you. So selling gold, be clear on who you sell gold from. But just back to the gold being coin. And, for me, we saw this trend coming through the East, and I was very excited about it because for me, it shows a new trend that's happening with the millennials and the Gen Zs. And for me, that's exciting that they start to see gold and even silver to a degree as value. I mean, we saw what happened with the Reddit groups and the Wall Street bets where they actually pushed the price of silver up. It was January 2 years ago. And we've seen even silver over the last 2 years actually consistently grow. But we looked at gold, and when we looked at the whole gold being coins, now South Africa has very clear laws on, as lay people, what you can own in gold. Now, you can own little bars, which have to have serial numbers. You have to have proof of where you purchased them and so on. You can own Krugerrands or sovereign coins through us from anywhere and around the world, or you can own medallions. Now, we look at medallions as a preferred class because they are considered to be in the same class as jewelry and collector coins. Now, the great thing with that is you can take them anywhere in any quantity, and there's no limitation to that. For instance,
is that meaning as in if you go overseas?
Yes. You can take a kilogram, a 32-ounce medallion, and put it in a box and rightfully leave this country, and you would not be breaking any laws. If you had to take 10 ounces of 10 Krugerrands, you'd need a SARS clearance to take them. I've had clients saying, yeah, but they've done, and I say, we're talking what is legal and legitimate a way of moving your own wealth. So, but that said, I mean, the whole thing with the gold being coin is, as I said, we looked at the medallions. And so you must remember a gram of gold is very small. And we actually then looked and we said, you know what, we're going to produce a 1 gram little gold bean coin, and we got the little coffee bean logo on it. And we then produced a 2 gram gold bean coin. So we offer those as your entry points. And the lovely thing with that is the 1 gram right now with the growth is, I mean, when we started this, you could have got one for around about 1,500 Rand. They're close to just around 2,000 Rand right now. And it's a little coin. We get them in bottles, so you can actually also buy them in bottles of 5, 10, 20. You got
one of the coins there?
Yeah. So you can see there, that's a gold bean coin. This is the card it comes on. And again, what's great with this is we say every gram counts. Now, again, as you said, if you bought a gram today, in 3 years from now, what's the Rand to dollar then? What's the price of gold then? Suddenly that gram has massive value. We also look at it saying, okay, well, I can only afford to buy, every 3 months or 4 months, every quarter, 1 gram of gold. Think about that. After 3-4 years, how many grams you got? Suddenly, 1 gram is no longer insignificant because it's 8, it's 10, it's 20 grams. Then suddenly, like I said, an ounce of gold's around $52,000, Rand, sorry. Then you look at that and it suddenly becomes more realistic on what you're actually holding. And that for me is what's really special about the gold bean coin is it's accessible. We also looking to do some major exciting things in the near future. So we looking to be going into Amazon, which as soon as we have, you please check the links and on through social media, through our various channels. And you'd be able to then go to our website, or it would take you straight through to Amazon or Alibaba, and you'd be able to purchase. Again, we're also looking at Black Friday coming up now, the end of the month. We are going to be offering for every 1 gram of gold, you will get a silver gram free, a little medallion also. So we're looking at various things that we're going to be doing there also.
And I think it is the perfect thing to, help Gen Z and millennials garner more wealth, is because they don't want to be tied down, and because you can take quite a bit of your gold out of the country if you do leave. So if you're putting away 1,500 Rand a month and accumulating, it's not like you're going to be restricted to have to leave it here. You can then obviously take it if you do end up going somewhere overseas.
Well, again, we know the trend with Gen Zs right now is they don't want to be held down. They want to be able to get up. They want to be able to go and live in Cape Town for 6 months or 2 years. They want to be able to go overseas and travel with a partner or friends. That's very much what's happening. And a lot of the time, they don't want to be held down with all these accumulation of things. It's an outright purchase. You got it in your hand. You own it. You could be in the Far East and realize, actually, I need more cash. You could literally cash one of those grams in and you'd get money in that currency to the similar value of gold globally. That's the power of it, that it doesn't hold you back. It's almost like having traveler's checks in a different form.
Are you much of a conspiracy theorist at all?
No, I'm not, but I always do love these things, and generally I've always said what we understand as a society is far less than what we know. And to be honest, I think even if we look at history, they were saying that history is, of course, only written by the victors. So half of history is not correct. It's biased. And then we go and look at that other half, and even that's even further. So what is true and what do we know? But I want to hear this.
So the reason I'm asking, being in the gold industry, I'm sure you obviously have heard of the Anunnaki.
Yes, I have heard. Well, I don't, not because of gold, but I've heard of them, yes.
So apparently they came to Earth, the ancient Sumerians, they came here and basically sped up their evolutionary process to get them to be able to mine and everything, because the gold on Earth, because gold in the universe being so scarce, obviously on Earth we know it's scarce, there in the Anunnaki's climate, something was going on with their climate, so they needed to come get gold, and they were going to do something with gold particles to protect their atmosphere. So they came to Earth to then mine the gold, and they were speeding up humans to be more evolved, to mine better. So apparently that's the theory behind why gold is so valuable and why we as humans see that, because our, not really creators, but our whomever, our educators, and who sped up, maybe took us from apes to being humans, were so interested in gold, and that's why we do it. I just thought that was interesting, because obviously I definitely don't think that's true, but it's just fascinating to see, something like gold. I mean, who doesn't know the value of gold? I think it's the one thing that even the uneducated will be like, okay, no, there's value in that.
Absolutely. And that's, that is something that we've got to fight, because, when I say fight, is make people aware of. Because when you say gold, you almost get a lot of people that don't have a lot of available income switching off, saying it's not for me, it's for the rich.
Yeah, I can't afford it.
And I can't afford it. And we like, no, you can. There are means and ways. I mean, you can accumulate percentages of grams on a monthly basis for as little as 500 Rand. We got products that are monthly recurring payments that could even cover as little as 500 Rand a month.
Which, if you may be putting that 500 Rand towards a retirement annuity, it's going to be worth less if you're doing that and putting it in the bank as opposed to investing in gold.
Well, simply, I mean, and I've spoken about it before, is we took my RA, which is, it's still an ongoing case study that we do. It's 15 years down the line. And what's interesting is if you look at the premium value, so what I pay for on a monthly basis, versus its growth, it's been minimal, not to what I was promised. And again, this is a top company within South Africa's RA, retirement annuity. What's interesting is if you convert that annuity into dollars, it actually runs at a loss because of the value of what the Rand was to now and all of that. So it actually runs at a loss. Yet, if we take those same values, those same monthly premiums, and we apply it to gold, you would have, so work on numbers. Premium value is probably around 200,000 Rand. Actual growth in the RA is probably around 225, 230 right now. Gold, same premium value. So buying gold on a monthly basis, you'd be sitting at, I think it's over 400,000 Rand in value right now.
And what's nice is also because you don't want to maybe not have the RA, but because you can be buying 500 rands worth, you could be, okay, my monthly premium is 2,000 rand. Maybe I take 1.5 and continue that, and I can still take that 500 and put it in gold. And the value of the gold and the profit that you make and the interest that you get from that will probably offset and grow whatever loss that you made, obviously, in the RA, if you did make a loss.
Well, it's run at a loss, but again, you look at it, and I've got to the point where I can't not pay for it because I've invested into it for so long. Yet the guy that sold to me is the guy that drives a Lamborghini, and he's a good mate of mine. We get on well, but I always say to him, I can see where my premiums have gone, and he's a great guy. He's passionate about what he does. He's offering a product which we when I grew up, that's what we are told: work hard, get a retirement annuity, and
it's
the rest will
still being
sort
told
out.
today, even.
Again, I'm never one to knock other investments. I say keep an open mind. And, like I said, this is where I looked at gold beans for millennials is it's different. It's something that is movable. It has value that is growing, and it's growing very well. It's positive. It fits very much into that way of thinking. Now, if you had to look at traditional investments, I think most millennials, I'd be surprised even if I'm going to go and try to see if I can get data on that, is how many millennials and at what age do they start taking up RAs? And I can tell you now, the take up on them is probably very low.
Mm.
Do you have an RA?
Yeah.
You do.
So the reason I do, there's probably many reasons, but the main reason, just my dad making sure that I'm smart with, potentially smart with my money and my savings, whatever. But at the time when I first started earning money, my brother was an advisor. So that also came into play. I think I would have done it regardless. But now looking at my premium and I often go on just to see if it's made any amount of money, and it's negligible.
Yeah.
It's kind of just, okay, it's putting money away. But if you're making no interest and then the inflation skyrockets, then the buying power is useless.
Exactly. But what would be interesting, and I think you even run a poll on that, is how many millennials and Gen Zs actually own RAs. I would love to know, because I don't believe it's that high. I think my generation and older, of course, we that was what we got. But I think you're one of the exceptions to even amongst your friends.
I would be interested also just to see the comparison of, let's say, my parents, because they're both in their 60s. If you had to look at what percentage of the income was left, or at the end of the month after most of the expenses and whatever, was there a 60% left over? Was there 40? Because I know just with the price of inflation and all of that, maybe people are a bit more lenient with what they spend their money on nowadays. But I'm almost certain most of the people I know and who are in good jobs are pretty much still living paycheck to paycheck.
Absolutely. And this is a global phenomena. I mean, even in the States, I was saying, if you go back into the mid 50s, into the early 60s, what people earned and the houses they had and the jobs they had and what they could actually buy with their money was massive compared to what you can buy today. And what you're saying is why, as I said to you, the profile of a millennial or Gen Z specifically is they got 2 jobs, more than 2 jobs. They don't stay in one company for long. They generally follow where the money is or where their passions are. So they're not tying themselves down to stay at the job, work hard, and it will reward you. They are making sure they can maximize their earning potential. And the biggest problem is right now things are so expensive. So what remember I said what $100 would have bought you 50 years ago, 10 years ago, what it buys you now, even what rands. I mean, I always give this scenario. We look at what you'd spend in groceries now. A bag of groceries is 1,000 rand right now.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Checkers the other day. I didn't even buy a Fool's, and I'm also very not frugal, but I'm very strict with what I spend my money on in terms of food. And also, okay, let's not get into if healthy food is more expensive than unhealthy food, but I literally bought essentials like meat, avos, eggs, and some vegetables for about 3 or 4 days worth of food. And it was over 1,000 rand.
Correct.
I mean, the thing I remember most, I was in varsity. I remember a tank of petrol. It was a Polo at the time, was maybe like a 45 liter, was 400 rand. Now to fill up my Fortuna, it's 1,500 rand, which is ridiculous. Down the road here, there was a KFC right next to my school. I used to, when I was in school, be able to get a 2.50 rand ice cream with a cone in it. What can 2.50 rand get you now? That ice cream at KFC is, I don't know what it is, probably at least 12-15 rand.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, when were you in varsity? How many years ago?
I finished in 2018. Yeah.
So not that long ago.
No.
We're not even talking 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to 8 years ago. Come January 2020. No.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah. This would be my 8th year out of varsity, roughly. Yeah.
Correct. So in 8 years, what does if you had to pay for 50 liters of fuel right now, what are you looking
Probably
at?
like 1.5.
Correct. So what cost you $400 8 years ago is now costing you 1,200. Can you see just in the loss of wealth? You know, and this is why people are living from paycheck to paycheck
because
to paycheck.
Their paychecks aren't increasing at the rate inflation
exactly. So we're not getting the same growth in our salaries in line with inflation. I mean, and again, this is where we look at our economy, and our economy is not growing. We need stimulation. We desperately need to get this economy up and running. And it's going to take a lot of political will to break that now. Do I believe we can? Of course we can. But again, is this a local problem or global problem?
Do you think there's ever the buying power will ever improve, or can there be dramatic changes that can be implemented? Because we've seen the last 10 years how it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Do you think it's just continue to get worse, where people, I think that maybe just the pay gap is just the wealthy are going to stay wealthy, the poor are going to get even more poor? I mean, soon we're going to have people that make a billionaire look like it's nothing. I mean, think about how much that's changed. To be a millionaire now is like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So interesting. Remember when we were talking about the anarchy and I said that everything happens in cycles. And I even spoke about the US, the dominance of the dollar or the petrodollar or the dollar as the international form of monetary exchange. There's cycles in everything. And again, I mentioned it earlier also, is we are due for some reset economically, globally. Will that be a massive depression? I mean, we're coming up to almost 100 years since the 1929 global depression. And a lot of forecasters and a lot of people within the financial sector are looking at there is something that has to give. We can't have the current monetary policy that it is. We can't have the polarization of the West and BRICS and so on. That something's going to have to give. Will it be a war? Will it be a complete economic meltdown as in the form of a depression? Now, that would form a reset to a degree. Do I believe that we will ever have a period, and I think to a degree in South Africa, especially for whites being privileged during the 70s and 80s, there were periods where you could own a decent sized house, have a pool, and drive a nice car in relation to the money you earned. That same relation is not happening now. You got to be earning a lot more money to have a lot of those things that our parents had as we grew up. And again, do I think that those kind of times will come again? There are definite cycles. How does that work out? You know, that's where we are right now. We got such mass uncertainty right now. And that's why the growth of gold, like I said to you, we projected $2,250 for the year. and we were being quite bullish. And if you had said to me in January of 2024, oh yeah, by the way, gold will surpass $2,500 an ounce and we'll go to $2,700. In fact, it might even hit $2,800 an ounce. I would have said you mad. But the fact is we're there. And a lot of what's driving that is this uncertainty. And it cannot be sustained for much longer. Something has to give. Personally, if you had to say to me, what are things coming? I do think that there is going to be some form of an economic reset in the form of a prolonged recession, which will be, because we are now more interlinked globally, will affect all over. Like I said, what was the spur for the gold bean coins or the gold beans in the East was unemployment, was increase in inflation, was increase in inflation. And you know, those are the things that we got to look at. We look at in this country, unemployment is still too high. It's over 40%. We look at earning, you know, what a person is earning, basic salaries is literally, as you're saying, running from month to month. In fact, in this country, it's even worse. We have some of the highest debt levels in the world. There are people that have over-indebted themselves with credit cards and your clothing store cards and buying furniture on credit and so on. There are people that in their lifetimes will never ever be debt free. And we've got some of the highest levels of debt and people that are indebted in the world. And it's because people are literally not having enough money to meet the demands of what they need to get through in a month. I've seen it. You go to a shop where someone is paying for groceries on terms. In other words, they're paying it over 3 months or 4 months. And that's crazy.
And then the next week they're going to have to pay that over the next 3 months plus 1 week.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at, let's just say how much I make in a month compared to what my parents were making, I know for a fact I make more money than what they were making at my age. But if you look at it, I've got less. And it's because even with earning more, that buying power is just so much less. So then it's also, that's I think what also creates the debt and the cycle of debt is you look at, let's say you're coming from a privileged position. Like obviously those people buying groceries, obviously not privileged. But if I look at myself, I'd be like, okay, well, my dad had a house, he had this, he had that. Okay, well, am I unsuccessful then? Am I this? Am I that? Okay, I'm going to have to take out a loan. I'm going to have to buy that on credit. And then you just make yourself into more of a financial, quagmire because you've looked around. And that's also what social media does in creating debt.
Exactly.
You see all these people around you. What you see, that person is driving that car, but you don't know all of their salary is going to paying off that car. So it perpetuates more debt by looking on social media and just seeing that person's got this, they've got that, I've got nothing. And then you take out that debt. And I'm definitely guilty of thinking, oh no, I'm not doing as well as someone else based on what you see, based on what they did in a different generation. Whereas you can't look at it like that because times are completely different.
100%. For me, the biggest thing that social media plays into is instant gratification. And if you see just how everyone buys into it, and I always say, be mindful that you might see all happy and smiley people. And I mean, the whole thing with Siya Khaleesi and his wife is a perfect example of that. The face or the facade that they showed the world is they're happy and everything's fine and rosy and everyone, yay, Siya. And I'm by no means, I think he's an unbelievable captain and what he's done for this country, and that is amazing. And quite frankly, what's happening in his personal life has got nothing to do with any of us.
Exactly.
But the way they portray themselves in social media brings in comment and brings in criticism and brings in all these people that actually don't really have a right to be commenting on them. But because they created this facade that everything's fine, that when something like this happens, this is complete shock. Like, but we never saw you. We
thought
happy.
You were perfect.
Yeah. And again, that is that is the case in point here. Is we tend to be chasing things, and this is why, again, why for me, and I say this to the Gen Zs and to the millennials, is look for investments that help you. Look for things that are going to fit into the way you're moving through the world, through this uncertainty, through everything that's happening. You know, you got the challenges. I mean, the speed that we're learning things. And I remember I read a book, a good probably 15 years ago, called Business at the Speed of Thought. And what was interesting is they were talking about that how actually things every 3 years accelerate, or then it was 5 years. There's this sudden leap in knowledge, in computing power, and so on. I mean, that then dropped to 3 years. I don't even think it's a year now, and we are accelerating further. I mean, and we will only see this later on in our lives, is the impact of AI, which is probably a year and a half old. What that has already done in such a short period of time has been phenomenal. And I mean, you're starting to see the beginnings of what this is going to become. And again, that's going to put a lot of pressure on jobs. A lot of your traditional jobs, be it through banks, lawyers, all these kind of jobs where we think they're safe and, you know, they're good, solid jobs. I can tell you now, within the next 15 years, they will be redundant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would trust a computer telling me something legal because they got all the access to all the legal information in the world
without bias.
Compared to a person. Exactly.
And that's where it's going. And I mean, we see the speed of AI, its growth. I mean, just over the last 6 months, I don't know if you've noticed, there's all these new things coming out. You can have a trainer, you can have a performance coach, you can have a life coach, and it's all AI. But it will know and understand you through the algorithms, through everything, all the input you give, and yet it's got this database that's literally nearly infinite. And will cram all that information and will give you what you believe is to be correct for yourself.
Well, if there is a robot overtaking and we do have some sort of war, at least gold, even in all the movies, is still valuable.
Exactly. Gold is here to stay. We look at the growth. And again, I always say pay attention to what the big boys are doing. And what I mean by that is your reserve banks. What are they doing? The growth in the purchasing of gold has been unprecedented over the last couple of years, and it's not slowing down. In fact, I mean, I've got clients in the East that I cannot supply them enough gold right now.
Good problem to have.
Well, it's finding the correct suppliers to meet those needs. And that for me is actually our biggest problem right now, is actually finding the suppliers that have the infrastructure to meet those needs.
Is there, in terms, like, I don't know, in terms of the mining of gold, you know, how much of the world is gold free?
So gold is finite. So there's a beginning and end to it. With my extensive knowledge in the mining sector, I mean, I was in the mining sector before I went into Bullion. From a supply perspective and manufacturing perspective. So, I mean, I've been down the deepest gold mine in the world, which is now over, I think it's coming up to 5 kilometers deep. Sure. At the time I went down, it was about 4.5 kilometers. They're probably exceeded now 5 kilometers.
Where's that?
That's Impaneng. That was Anglo Gold Ashanti. That's just outside of Coltonville on the N12 out towards Potch.
With these gold bean coins, obviously, they are a good entry level purchase for people, maybe as a gift, or maybe people that don't have much disposable income that still want to obviously safeguard some money and just get into gold in general. You know, who is it for? Or, you know, is it person specific, or can parents buy it for their children? Especially, I mean, now it's almost December, unfortunately, how quick this year's gone. But, you know, what is your main people?
So first and foremost is my message to Gen Z, to millennials, is take the power and start to look at this. This is a great product. It's geared up, and from a price point, everything is for you to take that power and start to grow your wealth. It's probably the best way of learning to invest and learning to actually accrue wealth in a short period. But again, it's a great gift from parents to children. This is a different world we're living in. Start to have that paradigm shift away from traditional investments and actually start to look at these as options. It would be an amazing gift to give your child a card with a gram of gold on it and saying, this is my investment to you and your future. We had it now recently where a guy purchased a bottle of 10 1 gram a bottle of gold bean coins as a wedding present. And imagine that as a great way of saying, you guys mean this much to me that I'm actually investing in your future. And it's about generational wealth. It's about future growth. And I thought that was just amazing.
You've given me an idea. I've got friends getting married in March next year, and it'll actually be a great wedding present.
Yeah, and that's what exactly was that. And again, with all the uncertainty that's going on, we got to look at what is given consistent growth. And right now, gold is that. If everything has to implode on whatever level, we don't know. We don't know where we'll be this time next year. That's how much uncertainty there is right now. But as you've said, and we've spoken about this, is gold has had demand through millennia, had always had an intrinsic value to human beings. And I still believe that is relevant now, probably more than ever in the times we're living in.
Well, thank you to the Anunnaki. And thank you, Deon. I appreciate your time.
Oh, Jesse, thanks a million. And I always appreciate chatting.
Awesome. And thanks, guys, for watching. Cheers.